Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bill Barber. I am one of the hosts of the Gaming Collecting Podcast, a podcast I do with my sister Alex, where we talk about all sorts of games and animes from our childhood. I'm also one of the co-hosts of the 3DO Experience, a retrospective podcast on the Panasonic 3DO, a very obscure console from the 90s. And I am also one of the co-hosts of Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast I do with my best friend Matt, discussing all things nerdy and geek culture, as the title would suggest. I'm also an occasional photo blogger over on Instagram at the account The Barber Who Games, where I post all sorts of things from my video game collection. Today I am here to talk about one of my favorite games of all time. Not my 100% favorite, but one definitely in my top two, I would say. The game itself is Tales of the Abyss, a 2006 role-playing game, possibly an action role-playing game, created by Namco Tales Studio. It was originally released for the PlayStation 2 and was later ported to the Nintendo 3DS in 2012. Now, my history with Tales of the Abyss is a little bit interesting. Originally, I was a PlayStation 2 kid growing up, and I had a bunch of friends that had Nintendo GameCubes, and I kind of lived vicariously through them when it came to the GameCube library. One of my friends pretty close by back in the day had a copy of Tales of Symphonia, and I always remember being drawn to Tales of Symphonia and being very interested in playing a game similar to that. Now, of course, being a PlayStation 2 owner, I had to make do with what the PS2 had. So I went to the local GameStop, and lo and behold, I discovered that there was two Tales games for the PlayStation 2 back in the day. There was Tales of Legendia and Tales of the Abyss. For whatever reason, Tales of Legendia, the cover art just, didn't vibe with me. And my younger self saw the cover art for Tales of the Abyss, and that was immediately the one that drew me in. So, of course, I picked up Tales of the Abyss then, and I would proceed to... that would be my game for a couple of years, because back in the day, playing an RPG, especially at a younger age, it was harder to get through these games because problem solving wasn't my strongest suit back in the day. But I remember it was one of those games that I spent many a year on. And the Tales series is pretty interesting. It is kind of like a mix between an action RPG, similar to Kingdom Hearts. But it also has the feel of a turn-based RPG. So you'll go around the world and you'll run into encounters on the field. But once you go into the battle arena, you go into an action-based style of game where you have full control over your player. And one of the things that makes the Tales series super unique is the fact that they're actually multiplayer, in a sense, where when you go into battle, you can actually bring in a second player, or I know in the GameCube version of Symphonia, you could have up to 4 players. I believe in Abyss, if you have the multi-tap, you can also have 4 players. But you can all band together and actually do all of the combat during gameplay, which was a really cool idea. It's not the most practical, because I understand when you're exploring around in the dungeons or doing town stuff, it's not the most entertaining thing for them. But it was a really cool idea, and the battle system is super engaging to get into. It's really fun to master. It almost feels like a beat 'em up at times, especially because Abyss was the first game in the Tales series to introduce the free running mechanic, and the free running mechanic really opens the door for a number of different possibilities. There is specific boss fights throughout the game that are supposed to be unwinnable. They're a designated loss in story wise, but if you are good enough with the free running mechanics, you can actually win these fights, and they actually programmed special dialogue into the fights that would actually highlight the fact that you weren't supposed to win this fight, and they kind of acknowledged that. Another thing I love about the Tales series is the art style. These games are super anime, and as a big anime fan, I just love the aesthetic. They are to a degree kind of cliche storms, depending on who you ask, and they are very, very cliche in a lot of ways, but I honestly really enjoy that aspect of them. The stories themselves are not for everybody. I understand that some of these games, if you're not a huge anime fan, these games might be a little bit hard to approach, but the reason I love Tales of the Abyss is its story is kind of split into 3/3. The first half of the game is to avoid spoilers, I'll put a spoiler warning here, but the main character of the game is a very unlikable character at the start of the game. And as you go through the game, like, you basically, he gets essentially sent to rock bottom and he has to essentially restart and rebuild himself. And there's a bunch of twists and turns, and his development is one of the main reasons why I love this game's story so much, because you really do start the game absolutely hating this character. And by the end of it, you really like him just because of his journey and growth. And it all makes a lot of sense the more you uncover the game. Like, there is a lot of very unexpected plot points that you wouldn't expect. And another thing I love about these games are they're very exploratory. Like, there is so much game to like uncover here. Like, there's a lot of different side quests and dungeons that you can find and get like bonus stuff, more story aspects, additional weapons, armor, and just all sorts of stuff. I will say though, one caveat against the game is the Tales series is very brutal in the sense of if you say miss something very early on, it's very easy to lose that forever later on in the game. Like, there is a lot of side quests that can be completely lost forever if you don't do them at a very specific time. But once you kind of figure out the Tales series, you'll learn very fast that it's kind of like you want to check around everywhere. Like, they're very meant to explore and like interact with as much as you can see throughout the game. Another thing I really love about this game is it has a phenomenal dub for the time. Like, the voice actors do a fantastic job at like capturing all these characters, and it is just an enjoyable. It helps highlight why the story is so fun and engaging, which is also another thing that I love about this series is the skits. Now, in the Tales series, there are random and story-based segments where the characters' portraits will pop up on screen at random points if you hit a button on screen when it says, like, say, a skit is available. I think on PS2, it's you hit the select button, and you'll get the portraits of the characters relevant to this discussion, and they will have kind of like a little chat and discussion, which they're not necessary to complete the game, but at the same time, they are very, very key to a lot of like the deeper lore. Like, sometimes like they're completely like random. Like, they'll be talking about, say, like, you found like an item on the ground and they have to have a discussion about it. It's very similar to like in like Dragon Quest like 4, I want to say, on the DS anyways. There was like the party chat mechanic where you could like just kind of like get the characters together and like talk amongst themselves, and you get a whole bunch of fun dialogue like that. It's also very common in the Tales series, and it's one of the like major highlights. Um, Also, Tales of the Abyss, another thing that I really love about it is it was the first game in the series to use like somewhat realistic character graphics. Like, all the previous games by this point, like Symphonia and Legendia in particular, were still using like the chibi style character portraits, and Abyss was really the first one that brought like the more realistic character one-to-one designs. And it's just such a nice, great game to look at. Like, the PS2 wasn't the most powerful system of that era, but like what the developers did with it was just such a nice touch. And aside from that, another aspect I really like is the soundtrack. Motoi Sakurabora, who's one of the main composers of the Tales series, does the majority of the soundtrack. It is very similar to a lot of what he does, but it fits the game so well. And I just love exploring the world. Like, the world is full of so many very different areas. Like, it still has like the old school RPG world map, which is just fun to explore. And honestly, the game is just like full of twists and turns and all sorts of different things. The combat is super engaging. You can bring your buddies in, and in all honesty, it is just such a super fun and engaging game. I will say it is kind of on the longer side, which does make it a bit of a challenge like to complete. But overall, I loved it from beginning to end. Like, I still go back and play this game. At least I try to at least play it maybe once every 2 or so years. Especially when it was brought over to 3DS, and it was just another easier way to experience it. Unfortunately, though, the game has only been released on the PS2 and the 3DS, so it's not the easiest game to come by these days. But it's also not the worst, and because of that, it kind of gets this it has a very weird reputation with gamers. Like it's kind of some people absolutely love it like me, and then a lot of people don't like it. I know the main character, Luke, is one of the main reasons why the game is a bit divisive, but honestly, he's the reason why I absolutely adore this game. And it honestly, because I like this game so much as a kid, it caused me to actually go out and play pretty much every other Tales game that was released. And because of that, now it's like my personal, it's probably my favorite RPG series next to Persona. um I've gone through and played like every game. I've experienced all the different ups and downs and highs and lows of this series, and all in all, like, this is just a game I absolutely adore, and I really wish more people would play it because I feel like it's kind of the more underappreciated entries in the series. But it's hard to say, honestly, sometimes, because I've learned over the past couple of years there's a lot of people that do love this game. All in all, though, like, great story, great cast of characters, great soundtrack, just an overall great experience, gameplay and all. Hopefully, I've been able to convince some of you guys to check out Tales of the Abyss, arguably one of the best games in the Tales series. And with that, everybody, thank you for listening. I very much appreciate this opportunity to talk about Tales of the Abyss with you all. And once again, guys, happy gaming.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm one half of Super Pod Saga, a topical variety video game podcast fueled entirely by nostalgia and unleaded gasoline. Super Pod Saga, we discuss a different video game topic each and every week. We have new episodes every single Monday covering a different video game topic. More than anything, we want to entertain our listeners and make you feel like you're one of the boys, like you're hanging out at a campfire with some of your best zany, caffeine-powered buddies and just talking about your favorite games and all that stuff. Stop on down to Super Pod Saga. It's on every podcatcher there is. If it's not, let me know and we'll get on it. But again, Super Pod Saga, stop on by.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.